85 tabs open. You know, now I have a pretty good connection.
I know I was going to close mine, but then I thought if I need anything on that laptop and I close it, forget it.
Good. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, May 5th, 2022 meeting of the school committee. We have just returned from executive session and I would like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance for those of us who are here. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we can jump right into it because we don't have any public here for public comment. And our first order of business is new business item A, which is the middle school boilers and controls project. And that is you, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, thank you. I'm really covering for Mrs. Rodemick tonight because this is her only agenda item. We had been approved for the middle school boiler replacement and HVAC controls upgrade project. And the amount on the warrant was $705,259. So we put this out to bid through McRitchie Engineering, and they've done an awful lot of work for us in the past. And when we got our bids back, we had 3 of them. The first vendor, however, when McRitchie was performing the reference checks, that was the apparent low bidder, they had received a couple of negative reviews for poor workmanship and for poor schedule performance from some clients. And so McRitchie also has direct experience with that particular vendor, and so it was the recommendation not to award the job to that vendor. So what the district has decided to do, with your approval, is to award the job to Allowance Service. They have been doing our boiler work for the last 5 years. We think they're very good. McRitchie concurs. References have checked out. So the difference in what was approved on the warrant and the actual bid is $70,957. And so what the plan is to make up that $75,000 is just to use money out of the revolving account. And so with your permission to do that, we can award that job to Alanco.
Okay. Questions?
I appreciate the due diligence.
Yes.
I do as well. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve. Let me see what the wording is.
Yeah, right on target so far.
I was trying to find the whole packet instead of just the school committee agenda. So hold on. There we go. I move to approve Alanco Service Corporation for the boiler replacement and HVAC controls upgrade.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes. That's excellent that we can move forward with that.
Yes, that's really great.
So that brings you up again next for the vote to ratify the cafeteria workers contract.
Yes, it's very exciting that we have come to successful agreement with the cafeteria workers for a 3-year contract. I really want to thank them. Nancy was part of the negotiating team, and it was a true pleasure to work with the cafeteria workers. I think we were collaborative. We went back and forth with different proposals, and in the end, I think that we've come up with something that we are all very mutually happy with. I'll just give you a couple of highlights of that contract. So what used to happen with the cafeteria workers is if you were a general worker and you were asked to move up, we would pay the general worker a little bit more to occupy the role of an assistant cook, baker, or general manager. And what the managers and the assistant cook bakers will say is if a general worker doesn't come to work, they sort of technically have to move down. And so while we've always been paying for upward movement, we will now start paying for downward movement. So the dollar amount is, it's 50 cents an hour for the duration of the shift. So that's, I think, more than fair. We are allowing cafeteria workers, if they have any unused paid personal time at the end of the year, to turn that into sick time for the following school year. Their uniform allowance used to be at $250 a year. It's going to go up to $275 a year. And then finally, in terms of wages, what we had found is that the people who were our assistant cook bakers or our general workers, they were incredibly underpaid if we looked at market value. And so it's been very hard really to put people in those positions if they can go somewhere else and earn lots more money. So our managers at both the secondary and elementary level will be getting a 2.5% increase over FY22. Our assistant cook bakers and our general workers, respectively, will get an 8% raise and a 14% raise. And I think that that is more than fair. They work very hard and they should be brought to market value. So that is for FY23. In the following 2 fiscal years, it's a 2.5% increase for all workers.
Thank you. I would echo what you say, that it was a pleasure to work with them, and thank you to all of the cafeteria workers for working so collaboratively with us.
Yes, and for sticking it out through the pandemic.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I'm glad we were able to make the market adjustment. It's
Yes.
important for all of our workers, you know, so it's great.
Yes, absolutely. Equity pay is super important.
Great. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Would you like me to do it, or do you want to do it?
I don't think it matters. I can move to approve the cafeteria workers contract for 2022 to 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are unanimously approved, and just want to highlight that this is actually the third bargaining unit that we have successfully negotiated with this year. So I feel like we're going into next year in a very good place.
Yes. Yes, we'll be starting with the nurses shortly.
And that brings us into the HTA side letter of agreement.
Okay. So the middle school will be taking on a new schedule this year, next year. Currently, they have Hiller block every other day at the end of the school day for 20 minutes. And it feels like that period of time is just really too short to use for things like remediation or instruction. And so with the revision of this schedule, Hiller block will happen once every 3 days. So if there's a day 1 and a day 2, on day 1 we'll have Hiller, 2 and 3 we won't. On day 4 we'll have Hiller, 5 and 6 we won't. So every third day there'll be Hiller. It will be tied to lunch. So Hiller block will be 40 minutes on the days when we have it. And in order to be able to do that, we had to modify slightly the teacher contract so that teachers are able to teach up to 25 instructional periods per week. And then they would have the 2 instructional support periods in any given week, or up to 2 instructional support periods in a given week. So really that's what you're kind of voting on tonight. This also ensures that they have 16 meetings, that they have over a 12-day period, that there would be PLCs, and that they would also have a preparation period each day. So that's what we're voting on.
I guess my only question regarding the Hiller block, which isn't our vote, but since it's on topic slightly, I'll mention, if it's possible next year to do a check-in in the same way that the high school did a check-in on flex time, just to do a survey of the teachers, the administrators, and the students to see if it's working, or some kind of an assessment of how the new schedule is working. It seems like a good idea, moving it earlier, lengthening it. Seems like a better opportunity for the ability to use that time as intended. So it sounds good, but it would be great if we could have some sort of assessment.
I agree. Yes, we can make a note of that. I think it's nice for remediation. If you want to do DEI or SEL or that kind of work, it gives us a nice free spot in the day. So, but it will be nice to have feedback from administration, faculty, students, whether or not the time feels well used.
Yeah.
I move to approve the HTA side letter of agreement for 2022 to 2023.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved, and I look forward to seeing how that is in action next year.
Thank you.
Brings us to our bullying prevention and intervention plan, which we had moved from last week so that the three of us could all be here to, just because it feels like a really important topic to be able to.
I really
do together.
appreciate that, and I apologize again
Oh,
for.
not at all. Do you want to
Sure.
say a few
I can
words?
talk a little bit about it. I think the first time we brought this before the committee was as long ago as January of 2022. So that people know, we began the work, we had our introductory meeting on June 21st, 2021. And our group met on June 21st, July 1st, July 9th. In September, we had a time when the administrators were all doing some writing. We had subcommittees that were meeting fairly regularly, so off of these major dates. On September 7th, the admin did the writing. We went back to the group on the 20th of September. They sent us off with a charge to do some admin revisions in late September. In October, we met with our wellness director so that we could talk about where they are with curriculum, because it's integral to the bullying prevention and intervention plan. And we sort of had one final meeting in November, and then we sent this document off to our legal counsel for sort of full vetting, which was very helpful because they were able to help us see what kinds of things had come, out of the law or, typically out of people's plans, and what kinds of things were being integrated into them. I think perhaps for me, the most important thing that we learned from our legal counsel is that where things like restorative practices used to not be part of bullying prevention and intervention plans, because the notion was that you didn't want to have an alleged victim and the alleged aggressor kind of put into the same place. Now, knowing what we do about restorative practices, with the permission of both parties, it does feel a whole lot better that our alleged aggressors and our alleged victims, or proven aggressors and proven victims, can come together and start to work on those relationships and really kind of understand, how consequences might be appropriate when we really look at what has transpired. And there's a nice educational piece as well. So there's a lot more education, I think, as opposed to just strict consequences, although consequences must be there. We have agreed to sort of reminders, so we've gone through this with the administrative team, and Chris Ocampo, the assistant principal at the middle school, has developed a protocol from the moment a bullying report is filed, how does an assistant principal or principal go through a set of varied steps, and we're ensuring that all of the forms are similar from building to building, so all of those practices have been aligned. And again, just, the support and education piece for kids is phenomenal. We do still have some work ahead. We're working on putting together a more concrete and hardworking, I think, district climate team. So something that will bring a lot of people together with a more clear and cohesive kind of purpose. And then finally, we are still working on the anti-bullying curriculum. I think we've had things, we've piecemealed things together over time. There are, obviously national organizations that put out very good curriculum, but I think what happens is you adopt it and then you modify it and then you change it, and then eventually it's not that curriculum anymore. So what kids would have reported is that, they see sort of a lot of things going from grade to grade or omissions at a grade, and so now we really want to make sure that that curriculum is sound, and that's a piece we're still working on.
That's excellent in terms of, I know that the bullying prevention and intervention plan is legally required that we review it so often, and it does contain a lot of important things, but I know there are a lot of other things that go along with preventing bullying and being able to address it in the schools. The one thing, and I haven't looked to see if this was changed, but just in terms of, because we've had so many things that have popped up on the website, in particularly when we were going through COVID, wanting all the COVID stuff to be so central, that it feels like the bullying reporting form has fallen. It's a little bit more difficult to find now than it used to be. Just if we could maybe make that a little bit more quickly accessible, I guess.
We can surely do that.
I know it's hard because we've had so many things that bubble up as priorities that they don't all fit in the same spot in the same way.
So
good work.
Yeah.
I appreciate the restorative justice piece. I also am always comforted to go back to these documents and like just even the definition of who is staff, like a reminder of that, athletic coaches, everybody in our district is held accountable to this, not, and I think it's just nice to kind of go back. It's important to revise it for content, but it's also a good reminder, a chance to sort of reground everyone in what this policy is all about.
Yes, and I'd like to thank our students, our volunteers, school committee members, administrators, everyone, teachers, parents, everyone who worked on this committee, because we put in a lot of hours and it was a lot of good work.
I
And
know
they were
it's
very invested people.
I know it's a lot. I mean, the document itself is so big, and I know that you all went through it so very carefully, and that's much appreciated. I think, especially just as this has become a priority, really, not just in Hopkinton, but for many school districts.
Yes.
So, I have a couple questions. When we've discussed bullying in the past, we've been talking about repeated behaviors by one individual towards another individual. Has that definition broadened or changed in this document, or is it still sort of?
Well, I think even, sort of in Massachusetts legislation, it's probably changed. And it is kind of, so it's a little bit interesting because you could have one student who is, there could be one incident with Amanda and one incident with Nancy and one incident with me. And that may not actually constitute bullying unless there's some kind of notion that the three of us are kind of working in concert. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's tricky, I think, to really make that determination. What is nice is there's a clear set of sort of bulleted criteria. And I think our administrative team is really thoughtful when they take a look at that and they say, now I have to hold up these incidents to this mirror and decide if what we are seeing is bullying, or if it's unkind behavior, or if it's a violation of civil rights. But because we really have all of those, this really nicely delineated piece, I think it makes it, I'll say easier, but never easy to make that decision.
So I guess the reason I was asking is because when I go to the bullying is not section, that situation you just discussed where there's three different people sort of targeting someone but not working in concert, just kind of like once by each person, that's not really clearly delineated, and bullying is not. And I'm just worried that, like, based on the wording of the bullying and the fact that that's not in the bullying is not definition, that might cause confusion. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think when we say, so if we go back to that, and Amanda is sort of, there's that imbalance of power, and there's something that she's doing every day, then I'd say that there's one person bullying another. But if Nancy did one thing once, I don't see Nancy as a bully, but I do see Amanda as a bully, if that makes sense to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is there's a situation, and it's we brought it up a million times, right? There's a situation that for the target feels like bullying.
Mm-hmm.
But per the definition of bullying, it's technically not bullying.
Right.
Which is exactly what you just said, where, like, there's an imbalance, right? But let's say, I would hate for it to be me, but let's say I do something mean to one child, and then Amanda does something mean to the same child, and then somebody else does something mean to the same child. That doesn't constitute bullying per se, because maybe it's only happened once per person. But the wording on the bullying laws is confusing about that. And I guess my concern is that particular situation, in the place where it says bullying is sometimes confused with other behaviors that might be undesirable but do not fit the definition of bullying, right. That particular situation isn't in here in the bullet. And I'm just worried that that the confusion will remain because it's not there. That's my only concern.
I think too, because in the example that you cite, the child that has had three people do mean things to them, the child is going to experience that as bullying.
They
even if
experience the
even
same.
if the people that have
right.
done it are not legally defined as bullies.
Right, and so it might be confusing to read the document as a parent of such a child
Absolutely.
and try to determine if your child is being bullied.
Right.
So I just thought, like, if there was a bullet point that was a little clearer in the bullying is not, that just has that one situation clearly outlined, that might save a lot of frustration, confusion, concern.
But if there's found to be a relationship in your example between you and me or the three of us,
And we're coordinating in any way, then it
Right.
would be
Then
bullying.
it would be.
But if that's hard
three
to know without an
unrelated
investigation.
incidents.
With that, right, and I think that also goes to the importance of encouraging people to report,
Right.
even if they don't know
Right.
if it's bullying or not. If there is something that feels like it needs that level of school intervention to figure out how to protect their
And
child.
maybe that's the truth. And I agree it's important to report. So, but I guess I'm worried about like the frustration and pain. Like if you think it's a bullying incident, you're putting your child, you're doing the report, and then nothing happens, and you're told it's not bullying, and the document wasn't clear about that
I see.
particular case. That's my only concern. Other than that, I think the document's beautiful. So it was just
Yeah.
that one bullet because we've talked about it so often.
Right.
But that's a tricky one because I feel like I understand what you're saying, and it is very frustrating when your child feels that the victim feels that they have been bullied. But I would want the parent to report that because an investigation would be needed to make sure there wasn't collusion.
Collusion.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
So I would actually want to know about that and let the administrator go through the evaluation. If we put a bullet and it dissuades people from identifying that, then
Okay.
we lose that opportunity to see.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I also think too that in the scenario described, even if there wasn't a finding of bullying, there would certainly be lots of intervention. I mean, we'd still engage in the restorative practices and all of that at school because we would want to make sure that the kids who were
Okay.
in this conflict were resolving that because it only exacerbates over time.
Okay,
if you
so even if it's not bullying, it would still cause a response to turn in a bullying report. There would still be some interventions happening for the child who is having issues.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I would
Perfect,
also
then.
say reporting it provides the record and the context so that, if three kids are picking on one child for wearing a green shirt or what, again,
Yeah.
and then that same child is being picked on again, and the reports keep coming in, surely the pattern, even if it's not one child that's doing all of the things, would suggest that there's more intervention needed for that child.
And we actually do have a shared doc, so in the event that, at Elmwood School, Leah and Amanda have some kind of conflict, and we feel like it's resolved, but then it bubbles up again when you get to Hopkins, and now there feels like there's a little bit of an imbalance of power there, and then we get to the middle school, and Amanda's not just in this place where she's got this sort of more social capital or power, and you have less, but she starts working with other kids. Now we've seen that pattern emerge over time in our schools, so we are really careful. And it's trickier for us because we are a district that changes schools every 2 years.
Right.
It's not like you're in an elementary school with the same principal for 5 years from, K to 4 or something.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Like I said, I just wanted to touch on this particular thing that we've brought up a lot of times to make sure that it was somehow getting addressed or getting left out if turning in a bullying thing wasn't going to help you. If you were in that situation, it would just cause more frustration. Right.
Right.
But it sounds as though interventions happen, and so then we should leave it in here and people should be turning in those reports. Okay.
It's important discussion, I think, because this is becomes so much of our conversation, just around bullying not just in Hopkinton, but as a larger group coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, and, child's pain is child's pain.
Child's pain is child's pain, and it's.
Right. I just, okay. Okay, I'm good with this.
So I'm sorry. Now, assuming we're going to vote this tonight, is there any like professional development that has to happen after that, or is everyone already aware because they were involved in creating this, or how is the implementation of this?
Before you vote on this, we do share it with the administrators.
Yeah.
And I think what's been most helpful to us after that sharing was the work that Chris Ocampo did.
That's phenomenal.
It's very
Really?
good, yes.
Okay. I move to approve the bullying prevention and intervention plan.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the hard work that went into that.
Yes, it's really appreciated. I love the restorative justice in there.
Okay, so that brings us into our working session for the superintendent's evaluation. I know that we have talked about it extensively, both when we did the formative a couple months ago and then kind of leading into this, and we've had so much evidence and so much that has been given to us to help us with this process. I always like to acknowledge that this is a very odd phenomenon where you sit in a room and publicly on TV have people evaluating you. That's not the way I do it at work in my office. But this is the way we are legally required to do it. And it's an important piece. It's one of really the three things that are called out by statute that we as a school committee have to do. Obviously, the other two are policy and budgeting, and then the hiring and evaluating of the superintendent. So it's important, and
I have to admit that I don't have a great feel for the cycle of the evaluations because of COVID. It happened at such weird times that I'm sort of like, I think this is the first time I'm involved in it at the right moment.
so in part of why we do it, we're trying to do it right now, is because it makes sense with the election coming up that there are 3 open seats for the school committee. We would want to have people who have been working with Dr. Kavanaugh all year to do the evaluation rather than potentially having
That
2
makes a
people and
lot of
3 new
sense.
people. So in terms of, I think the big piece today is trying to come to agreement on the actual ratings themselves. And then next week when we meet, we if you guys can get me by Tuesday your written comments, I will put them into one document and we'll review at that point to make sure it reads the way that intended. And then we will vote, and that will become the official evaluation at that point, even though all 3 of our comments will go into our executive session, or not executive, but into our documents.
Composite.
Thank you. So I had a little technical difficulty in sending it out. I realized it was because the privacy setting was not set properly when I sent it, but I know
really?
you said you were able to get the
have,
form as well. So I think it makes sense because step 1 is assessing the progress towards goals, is to kind of look at, I think what we did last year is we looked at actually go down to the goals themselves and go through those before we do the top ratings.
Yeah.
So if we go down to page 3, I input them into, are you looking at the document that Carol sent us, or the evaluation document?
I've got it all, Nancy.
I've got it all
I've
tagged too.
got my document,
All right.
I've got Carol's document. I think I have last year's by mistake I opened, so.
So let's start with goal number 1, which is the student learning goal. I could read it out loud if that would be helpful
I think
for people
that
at
would
home.
be good.
In the aftermath of a shutdown followed by limited in-person instruction, the superintendent will ensure that student learning data is used to drive instruction. It is imperative that building principals as instructional leaders, as well as classroom teachers and special education learning specialists, have the data to drive instructional choices that enable students to both grow and achieve. While the focus here is on all 5 schools, particular attention will be given to literacy growth and achievement at the secondary levels. And the focus indicators on that were 1A, B, and C. People have
Well read.
Uh,
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought this was a goal that was I marked as exceeded because I think there was an exceptional amount of work done to. Did you want to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm nodding my head in agreement.
Okay.
Sorry. And then I'm trying to look at different tabs on my thing.
Right. There was an exceptional amount of work done to assess where we were coming out of the during the pandemic, but then also where our students were when they arrived, having been through a variety of experiences in the previous year. Some homeschooled, some kind of accelerated, some struggled, some stayed on course, and we have heard. Because of all the great presentations we've had on dyslexia and on advanced learners, we've all heard a lot about some of the data, STAR data, and the other data that has been captured. And I think I have no doubt that it is actually being used to drive student learning. So I don't know. I couldn't think of anything I would ask that to be done beyond what was done. I had also asked Dr. Kavanaugh about because there were some schedule changes to accommodate there were schedule changes and course changes to accommodate some of what we were seeing coming out of the pandemic at the high school. We have the Hiller block. Flex block, and we also had some remedial courses available. I think Mr. Bishop had brought forward last year. And I think that the flex block had been well reviewed by students and staff as a time both to decompress and to access help. So the combination of scheduling and data-driven work here, I thought was really great. So that was my take.
Yeah, I think in terms of, if I look at the wording of the goal and I look at the key process benchmarks, and I look at the evidence supporting the key process benchmarks, I think it has well exceeded. I think one of the things that isn't in here that I think is actually a positive and an increase is the social emotional learning director, all the work done there. I think while it's not necessarily metrics about student achievement, it is another sign of the school taking seriously the fact that the kids were coming back to the pandemic and helping them to get to a point where they can achieve the way they would have before. So, yes, I agree.
I also felt that this was well exceeded in this particular area. And as I was going through all the evidence that we had, I was really struck because we talk about some of these things, some of the STAR data and some of the other instruments that are being used, but we don't always look at how many of them there are together. And we talked at length during the dyslexia presentation and the advanced learners, but there really is so much that is being done. It really it kind of blew me away. So
And this year too, I mean, again, because of the access we've had to your team and some of the presentations, it showed me that it's not like just you maybe looking at the data. I mean, this is it's a language that all of the teachers and the administrators speak. It's a common shared language around the data, which to me is what makes it work. So I like that. And I didn't even mention the disciplinary writing part, which I love. The new curriculum in the high school. So yeah.
And some of that has to come from the top, right? You can't have a common shared language unless your superintendent, your administration is supporting that. So
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And really, that was in the high school improvement plan this year too, the disciplinary literacy, and the SMLs there were great.
That's great. So that then moves us, so I'll keep that as an overall as in the exceeded, since we all seem to agree on that. The professional practice goal is goal number 2, which is to move the district toward greater proficiency in diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice, and anti-racism. Continue to grow staff repertoires and explore the curriculum, address more directly incidents of bias and, I dropped a word out. A word got cut off of my thing. It's more directly incidents of bias, and I'm going to have to flip back. Sorry.
sorry, did you want me to read it?
No, I can pull it up.
And hate.
Thank you.
And grow CPAC and LPAC.
Yes.
Got cut out of my box. Okay. Anyone want to jump in with that?
First.
So, this one's hard for me because in general, like I feel like as the superintendent, you've done really, really well. But then I look at the incidents in the middle school and so like I feel like meets maybe, but not exceeds or just because it feels like there needs to be more education, more training, more something to help with those incidents. But I may be in the minority.
I actually came to the same. I mean, I think we've done a ton of work, but we are still experiencing. Somehow, we haven't quite gotten the penetration. It hasn't had enough time. There's something. Honestly, I don't know what you could have done to. Which is the tricky part with this.
Right,
with this
exactly.
rating, because
That's
I
why
think
I'm
you-
like,
But like if you start here like with a jump rope or something, it takes a while for that to ripple through, and so I feel like I was torn here because I think you did what you set out to do.
right.
I believe it was the right set of action items,
Yeah.
and yet we just need more time. Like I think it just has to have more time to get through. So I was kind of stuck in between. And among there's so much great evidence that you called out, things that you've done. I actually, you cited the switch in some of the reading materials. I actually read All American Boys to kind of learn what our students are reading. I really appreciate some of those changes in text to bring us to a place where we can discuss real issues and social issues that our kids are living. And so there's been a lot of great work.
Yeah.
So I think I'm sort of straddling.
That's exactly where I am. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, you look at the high school and the 9th grade
Yes.
class,
Understanding our-
right?
Yep.
And like
Of course, is amazing.
there's
Yeah.
so much so yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I don't
So
Yeah.
I cheated a little bit because I know you're supposed to pick one or the other, but I actually X'd both Met and Proficient because I was so torn on when I look at all of the work that we are doing or that you've really instituted here, and what a focus this has been for you and for the district under you. It's impressive when you look at the evidence. It's impressive how the social justice is coming in, how we've seen some really painful, difficult things that we've heard about that have happened with regard to bias and hate incidents, and it's painful to know that's happening here in our community. I think the piece where I struggled is that I also know that's happening at a larger scale, not just statewide, but across the country, that there's just it kind of coming out of the last 2 years. Some of this has really grown in ways that we've talked about here, with some of the emotional maturity being a little bit less with our kids and just some of the divisiveness in society. So I struggled, and I did cheat by putting both, but I also felt like, kind of as I was going through, I also felt like, well, I don't think Desi wants us to say you exceeded on everything, which did sort of feel like we have to kind of find areas where we need some growth, and I think I would be okay with putting that as a Met, even though I cheated on mine.
it sounds like we're all in
we're
the
all
same
in the
boat.
same boat. I will say, I think one of your great strengths, which has enabled this work to be done at all, is your willingness to face difficult, uncomfortable situations head on and have those conversations and meet with parents and hear stories and go to training and have those conversations. And there are lots of people that I know in my life and in the world around us who it's so uncomfortable to have a lot of this conversation that it's easier not to have it. And I think from the time that you came in 2018, you've been stepping up into these very scary spaces and having these conversations and putting out blog posts and perspectives. And so, I think that I'm okay with a Met, but I don't want you to feel undervalued for your unique strengths that you bring to this topic, because without you, I think we would be so much further behind.
Yeah.
We would, and the fact that this has been a priority for you every year
Yeah.
that you've been a superintendent, I think is why things are not, I hate to say it, but as bad here as they are in some other communities, just in terms of how challenging it's been. And like Amanda, your willingness to tackle head on, to say, yes, we're having this problem here too, and to acknowledge it, it's the only way that we're gonna make improvements.
Yeah, no matter what, this is work that never ends.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For all of time, this will be work.
Right.
Human nature being what it is.
And looking at kind of the different ways that you have attacked it, and looking at kind of not our hiring practices, at looking at the curriculum, at looking at bringing in social justice and bringing in pieces that kind of attack the problem on multi-levels, I think is going to bring us to a better place.
And that walkthrough we
And
had,
holidays, and
Yes.
yeah.
that walkthrough we
walkthrough was
had,
great.
where they were completely shocked by how good we
Yes.
were doing
Right.
in terms of DEI.
And that's part of where I struggled with this,
Right,
where I wanted to go
exactly.
to exceed it, because the commitment is so real. It's comes from such an authentic place
Yes.
in the finding ways at getting at this that I don't know that everybody would have thought to bring in different consultants and to really
Yeah.
work towards it. So
Yeah.
could maybe put a Met plus.
Yeah, if there was at work, my boss,
We're all put a lot.
we have 3 is normal, 4 is exceeds, and 5 is you need a you need a promotion.
And that's how
he
Gessie
will
really
write
views
out
it.
a 3.9.
Okay.
You were pretty much a 4, but
Yeah.
maybe you miss one little tiny thing. But I want to make sure you understand that it's different than giving you a 3, right?
Right. That the Met is what the expectation is from the state, that anything above a Met is like a really big,
Yeah.
a big deal to the state.
I think I appreciate just the fact that there's open conversation about this, right?
all the
A
time.
lot of this is stuff that easily gets swept under the rug, that is hard to follow through on sometimes, and it's always addressed. It's a conversation that happens.
That brings us into district improvement goal number 1, which is goal number 3 would be the corresponding number. Address enrollment growth and ultimately building use / expansion throughout the district, resulting in a written 3 to 5 year plan. Work closely with the MSBA and the Hopkinton ESBC 2 on the Elmwood School project. So, go back to. This was another one where I'll be honest, I cheated a little bit again. Because so much work has been done, and your commitment to kind of looking at the buildings and looking at what has been done since we did the capacity study back in 2020. I know that this is a 1-year evaluation, but it's been a multi-year problem for us. That this year we had the addition put onto the high school. We had, modular classrooms that were recently put onto both Hopkins and Elmwood, and the ESBC 2, in fact, is moving through the feasibility, and we are getting to a place where this is an exciting reality. I think it was last time you were talking about the forums that we'll have over the summer in looking at the campus-wide planning, which just because of the timing, we had anticipated being able to do starting after town meeting last year, where we have appropriated the money from town meeting. But because of the ESBC 2 process, did not make sense to pull those apart.
Yes, that's correct. And really, I feel like with this particular goal, I'm almost in that same place that I was in last year, that I was, perhaps too eager to get kind of ahead of the game. But because the process, I think, of building a school, once you submit a statement of interest and, then you enter into eligibility and feasibility, and you have it on as project manager and all of that, it takes a very long time. So you can't really get to the place sort of where you would have wanted to be because, I don't know, financially, in terms of timeline, all of those things, they slow you a little bit, for sure. I mean, exciting things have happened, right? We've got an owned project manager, we're gonna be building new classrooms onto Marathon, so things are going as we want them to go.
Right. And the marathon project, to be fair, the issue was we needed another $695,000 because of the increase in materials. And you did bring that forward to town meeting. It passed,
Sure.
and that is definitely progress on all of the addressing the enrollment growth.
But again, a slowing. You know what I mean?
It's
Yeah.
slower than what we had hoped a year ago, but that's not because of anything that you did or
Sure.
didn't do.
It's
So-
just the world.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, I feel like this one's an exceed
I'm good with that. That's why I
Because-
cheated.
because there are so many moving parts to enrollment growth in so many different buildings, in so many different situations, right? We've had high school expansion, we've had the marathon expansion along with the issues. We have ESBC2, which is its own tons of moving parts that we have to all keep aligned, and everything's going smoothly. You know, and as someone who has worked a lot with, you know, design and things that go in front of people, the things that go the smoothest a lot of times are the hardest to do. So like when something looks like it's like, oh, wow, this is so easy, a lot of times the work behind it is so hard to get it to that point, right, where everything's moving smoothly. And I feel like there's, you know, like I don't worry about this. I don't get concerned. I don't feel like the ball's gonna drop ever. Like
No,
it
I
is
agree.
just always going great. So that I think that's why I feel like it exceeds.
And so much has been done, and we're just about to get to like the sweetness of the whole thing, where we're able to look at the campus district-wide planning and to be able to kind of think about the larger picture, where we were addressing the immediate needs and getting, you know, our schools that we identified as having immediate space issues. But we're getting close to that process where we can really start planning it out and looking at the 2-3 versus the 2-3-4 school and how that impacts down the road.
And to be fair, I look back. I mean,
Yeah.
before I joined school committee, one of the things that I was always concerned about was, you know, are we planning ahead? Because there were all these special meetings, and I didn't know what was going on, and you know, and like I said, now I'm just like, okay, it's handled, it's there, right? Like, no problem.
You also have the advantage of coming to ESBC2
Oh.
meetings, where everything feels
Yes,
great. Or exciting or something, right? It feels really good there.
And I'm on this one. I'm a straddler. I'm, you know, where you are. The only piece that I am eager to see unfold relates to the indicator 4C, I think, which is the communication and the engagement with the community. So, I know there's a sequence and a process, and I think once you bring the MSBA, everything has to fall into that sequence. I also know that we began our assessment of the situation in 2018, I think, with the capacity assessment that highlighted, or whatever it was called.
Capacity study where it had the
Capacity
different
study,
colors
the
that were the
different
red
colors.
and the.
Right, and so I feel I'm eager to get to the work. I think the time is right. So I know that in my head I feel like, gosh, should we as a committee have done more? Like I keep having that feeling that I know there's a time and a place, and so I project that onto this as well. Like, should we have done more? Because I feel like this is a very big topic, and while it is definitely addressed well, and our both you and Mrs. Rothermick are like right on top of this, and I believe you're also looking again at the parking lot usage. I think she was in the fall. She said she had revisited the sort of car traffic patterns around
Yes,
The
we
high
have a
school.
consultant coming in to talk about athletic fields as well.
and athletic
Because if you do
fields.
have to move tennis courts, and they go to a new place, will you be sacrificing a field to put tennis courts where another field was?
So I think you and Ms. Rodman regarding the exceeds, I just want to, make sure we're all coming along on this journey with you, and providing the feedback and so forth. So that, and we're not actually, I would say yes for exceeds, and then my comments could come in on 4C, but we're not evaluating it on 4C, I don't think. Okay. So that was kind of my straddle, but I would go either way if you two want to decide.
I would go with exceeds.
Yeah, I'm
Because I was
comfortable.
on the line, and I do feel like so much really has been done, and the pieces that have slowed the process down, you couldn't have controlled.
Right. And when we had the high school expansion, Ms. Rodemick and our contractor were here discussing the expansion, what was happening. So we were getting constant communication about it. And once again, it was under control.
Right.
So even though it was slowed, we knew exactly why.
Right. And
It was
again,
very slow.
it was, but the materials issue, particularly at that point, the shortages and the
Right.
difficulty with getting things
It's not
transported.
something.
And there were times when there were difficulties with like people being so far apart because we were in the middle of a pandemic.
And we extended this goal because of the pandemic interruption, and still so much was accomplished, even with the pandemic, which obviously took
Right.
both our attention, Ms. Rothmick's attention, Mr. Person's attention, like the whole
Everybody's.
cascade of people who need to look at campus capacity. We're dealing with like moving desks to make 6 feet of space between students and so forth. So I'm okay with exceeded. Just saying it's that element 4C that I would
Yep,
have.
that's in the
And that's coming.
That's
ESBC too
Yes.
will have their communication stuff.
excited for that.
happening.
Okay, that brings us into district improvement goal number 2, which corresponds to goal number 4, which is to grow the administrative team to improve communication, unity, and ultimately student learning experiences.
I think I'm up first on this one. I said exceeds on this one. I think I mentioned before at the last meeting, and have said, I think to Dr. Kavanaugh, that I am very appreciative of this goal. I think it took a fair amount of foresight to get this among all the other priorities, to bubble this up to a priority so that the administrative team has an opportunity to come out of the pandemic and regroup and work together. And I really like the presentation that was done by is it
John Doria.
John
Oh my
Doria.
gosh,
I
he's so talented. He's
loved
wonderful.
it. I was going through it and I was like, gosh, what a great, I just really like the content and the way things were presented. And it seemed like he tasked the attendees with, very specific reflections and things to, and then to talk together. I thought that was great work that you did. And I think your increased focus on circulating in the buildings and meeting one-on-one with the admin team, I think I was appreciative of this whole thing. I think you did it well, so thank you.
Yeah, this was a year I was in buildings much more frequently than in the past.
I've heard that from my kids.
Well, I have to admit I was straddling the line, but I think Amanda has pushed me over because for some reason my head wasn't in COVID space, right? This is the first year we're back. Of course, there's all this stuff that's a little bit behind that's starting to, pick up now. Of course, we couldn't put together a climate team last year when we were in the middle of hybrid and of course. So once it was framed that way, I'm like, I truly do believe that based on the fact that it really has been, we came out of a time where none of us were able to really meet closely, where we weren't, able to work as teams, that you have managed to make this much progress in this year is extremely exciting, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm a big believer in, forming groups and having personal relationships, even if everyone's doing different things. That's how I run my group. Mm-hmm. And so all of this work that you've done here is wonderful, and hopefully leads to a build up of more trust and more communication, right?
I did have worries coming out of the pandemic. We had spent so much time on Zoom, and we had spent so much time with contentious things, like whose job is it going to be to communicate with families? This feels so overwhelming. I don't know what to say. Did you tell it to that school or not to this school? Who's coming down here with more desks? And everything was a pull. So it was hard. It was a hard year.
And your team worked tirelessly. I know they worked days
Constantly.
that they were not intended to be working over the
Yes.
weekend and whatnot. And we got into this, I think it was last summer, where we were looking at, nobody had used their vacation time. I mean,
Right.
it felt unsustainable.
Yep.
And it does feel like we're in a different place now with that, but I'm sure that kind of the fallout of having been in that mode is not, it probably took a little bit more to write that.
Yes, and I think too that coming out of the hybrid year, people thought, oh, this will be great. We'll go into a nice, normal, typical year.
I thought that too.
And and when it wasn't, I think it was just it sucked the oxygen out of the room. I mean, they struggled mightily when you figured out that you'd been tricked. It wasn't going to be a nice, normal year.
But it is an amazing team, and
It's an amazing
it
team.
feels like you have done some amazing work with them, and that it is,
We do good work together.
yeah,
really.
the stability of the administrative team has been a real asset over the past, really since you came in
my
as the
God,
superintendent. We had a number of years where there was a lot of turnover in different positions on the administrative team, and it really, back to even when you were the assistant superintendent, but particularly you've had a good solid team in place. So
Yes.
I would be comfortable with exceeded as well.
I think this is one of those goals that I don't want to think about what we would have experienced if this hadn't been done. Because I think it's easy, if you hadn't invested the time to kind of come back together and provide an opportunity to process and to move forward, I don't think we could have moved the district forward this year in all the other ways the way we did, so.
But, brings us then into district improvement, which is goal number 3, which corresponds with goal number 5, which is to begin the process of defining SEL for Hopkinton such that the social emotional learning competencies are taught at Tier 1, supporting the whole child and the child's access to learning. And I will start out, I felt like that was a real clear exceeded for me, even though I did feel that pull of, wow, I feel like everything is so good that we're looking at. But it really, when we had Carla here making that presentation, and then seeing her present again at the Youth and Family Services forum that they had, it's clear how much work is going into this. And it also really became clear to me how much the SEL, it really ties into the DEI and how important this is to be able to work with kids before they get to the crisis point where we're looking at out of district placements or things that are much more significant. And it's exciting to look at it at the preventative level to me.
Yes.
What other people thought.
Well said. And embedded into the classroom, bringing that into every classroom as just a way of being,
Right.
is great.
I think, Hopkinton has always sort of, maybe, to me, has always sort of been unique in that there's a large focus on achievement, which is normal in high-performing school districts, but usually there's also a lot of pressure to achieve. So there's this kind of negative emotional thing where it's, you must be high achieving, you must, and all that stress and pressure and whatever. The fact that since I moved here, Hopkinton has focused on social emotional pieces of a child and helping them to learn how to navigate that stress and giving them kind of more positive supports. And now that there's a holistic program for that, and now there's going to be kind of a smoother movement through the different lessons that they're getting across. I mean, I think that's fantastic. Like, it's so unique, right? To have that prop up of the student emotionally and the high achieving piece tied together so well.
It's going to be really neat when they start bringing teams in to do the the CELOC, social emotional learning observable competencies, because then you just have that kind of qualitative data that says, how well are we doing? I think that's going to be super fun.
Well, I think what you just said too goes back. I'm remembering back to the advanced learner presentation and the conversation about all the competencies. I think there was that like colorful competency chart that we're really focused on the whole child. Like I think the district is really, really committed to that, and makes us stronger.
So I want to flip back up to the top. And to look
at the top. Is that
but the top
the summary?
That's a summary, really. So kind of looking at what we did with the student learning goal, we had put that as exceeded.
Yeah.
The professional practice we had put as met, and then it just kind of doing an average of what we all said. The district improvement goals were exceeded. Is that everybody's?
There were 2 professional practice goals, I believe, and I think we split them. Wasn't or maybe I'm wrong. Weren't goal 2 and 4 both professional practice, or was
Goal
one district?
4 is district. I thought was district improvement, but I could have maybe done
I
that
think
wrong.
4 is professional practice.
Okay, so the professional practice then.
I think it's split.
Okay,
So
so
I had two professional practice, 2 district improvement, and 1 student learning. Is that
I
what you
coded
thought?
it wrong.
Okay.
Yep. So that then splits the professional practice. I would say the tie goes to the runner, and I would put that as exceeded because I felt split on that anyway. That was the one that I cheated. Those were the ones I cheated on and put an X in both boxes. But I'm open to suggestions on that.
Yeah, I'm just mapping. Sorry, I should have mapped. I forgot. I always forget about the summary at the top.
Yeah, I know.
So our district improvement goals were they split or no? Where do we end up with goal 3?
So goal 3, district.
Were we exceeded on that?
Goal 3 we were exceeded on.
Okay, that's where I was.
Yep.
I was a little bit straddly. So
Can I say I feel as though I am missing a document, and that may be perhaps because I was missing. But yes,
Is
that
that
document.
is the one that I had tried to send out, but the link was broken.
Oh, and you said we could
that's-
find
yep.
it. That's what you were. Okay,
I'll forward
got
it.
it. It's okay.
But that's
I'll
okay because
find
you've got all the stuff in the thing, and
it. Right.
I can forward it already filled
Yeah,
out
okay.
too, with the goals already popped in for you.
Okay. Yeah, I was going through her goals and I made notes to
But you-
myself on that, but yeah, okay, perfect.
All right, so in terms of the professional practice goals,
I hate the whole, we don't want to make Desi uncomfortable by, I hate
am
that
comfortable
mental
I
model.
know, but I am comfortable putting it as exceeded because I feel like the one was very clearly exceeded and the other one I felt split between the met and the exceeded, so that leans me towards
And
an
if,
overall exceeded.
Yeah,
if I were going to put 1 to Met,
Yep.
I'd probably bump the district improvement one because of just that communication. But that's actually on the horizon.
Okay,
for
but
next year.
the district improvement, we rated both as
I
exceeded.
know we did. So that's the collective we. Okay, so we'll, yeah.
so everything's exceeds.
That was my feeling, but
I you know what, usually when I'm doing reviews, I try to find balance, but it has been a hellish 2 years. A hellish 2 years, and we have navigated it with our superintendent at the helm in a way that I can't deny that it's running smoothly now, and the transition from everything last summer to now,
and all this work went on while I think the public facing piece of all this was we were talking about masks. We were
Right.
talking about different pieces related to that, and that got a lot of attention, I think, in the community. But all of this work continued. It
Right.
really high levels.
I think if there's any time that anybody deserves exceeds across the board. It's, the last 2 years and how well this has been navigated and where we have ended up with these goals, even in the face of everything else. So I think I'm okay with.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so then we're going to go down to, beyond that, we can, with the indicators, thank you. The
Yes.
superintendent's performance rating for standard 1, instructional leadership. I had 1A as a focus indicator,
Yes.
Yep.
which is curriculum ensures that all instructional staff design effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons with measurable outcomes.
I had exemplary on that for many of the reasons that we highlighted for the student achievement goal.
Yep.
In this, I made comments for like the whole category of.
Yep.
So I won't go through because we're going to put these together. But I think one of the things that I appreciate about the way we go about curriculum, and this came out, I think it was exhibited to some degree with the dyslexia presentation and the advanced learner presentation and all the other concerns, is that you are very intentional and thoughtful about our curriculum. And you come at it from a place of tremendous depth of expertise and continuous education on what is happening. And so when presented with questions about, can we do this? Why don't we do that? Or this district's doing this? Or you're able to hear the need and figure out what is best for our Hopkinton students. I think sometimes it's easy to just say, okay, we'll just put a program in, because then people feel better. And, what I've appreciated both in the on-camera conversations and, talking with you one-on-one is that it's hard to say the course. It's hard to do what is like less sexy. But it is right for students. You don't get check marks for that stuff because people, it doesn't feel as satisfying to someone who's asking for something. And I've certainly asked for things and you've explained and I'm like, oh, you know what, you're totally right. So I know what that feels like. And I really appreciate that you don't you take the difficult road, you take whatever road is required for the students. And so I just appreciate that. I also appreciate that you look at all students, the focus, even that we have conversation about the 80% of the kids who are kind of in the middle, who can often fall out of conversation when people are advocating for struggling learners or advanced learners, and the middle kind of gets lost. And I think you don't lose the middle. So I appreciate that too.
I agree with all that.
Generally across this whole category, there are 3 indicators here.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah. I love that you're data driven. Yeah.
I know you do.
No, but I like it's so easy to fall on the comfortable, right? And especially if you're having to do something day after day, it's very easy to be like, oh, this worked well enough, right? And leave it at that and do that thing, and what I really appreciate is you take that step further and go, well, was well enough good, right? Or did it actually get us the results we wanted? And you're willing to back off of things, right? So like, even if we implement something, you're not married to keeping it. You will look at it objectively, make a decision as to whether it helped the children. And if it didn't, you're more than willing to find a different path. And I appreciate that so much because it means that our curriculum is always current. It's always growing with the latest science, right? And it's always teaching the kids what they really need right now. So, yeah, I agree with you.
It made me think of something Tim Person said earlier today, that you look at things in a fluid, not fixed way, that you are constantly evaluating, constantly where can we do better, bringing Athena in, looking at how can we take all the success that we've had and do better, and look at the places where we didn't quite meet where we needed to be and make better. And really, the ratings are just a little piece of the success that we've had here. I think it tells part of the story. I think the bigger part of the story is all of the stuff that goes on, kind of like the iceberg. There's a lot underneath. So I have for focus indicator 1D, I have evaluation ensures effective and timely supervision and evaluation of all staff in alignment with state regulations and contract provisions. If you want to start, Leo, down there.
So I think I would say I'm straddling on this one. But once again, I don't know that it's a Dr. Kavanaugh thing. And so that's why I like hesitated to say anything, because I think her work is probably exemplary, right? And I think some of the concerns I have are happening maybe at different levels that maybe shouldn't affect this, but I don't know, right?
Should we read the definition of exemplary?
Sure.
It says provides effective and timely supervision. This is for evaluation, right? 1D.
Yeah.
Yes.
And timely supervision and evaluation of all staff in alignment with state regulations and contract provisions, as evidenced by support to all administrators to develop and attain SMART goals aligned to school and district priorities and sharing best practices and success with the district community. Guidance, support, and monitoring for all administrators to ensure they observe and provide useful feedback to faculty and staff, and frequent observations of and feedback to administrators on effective leadership practice. Models this process through superintendent's own evaluation process and goals.
Yeah.
Does that
So then
help?
she falls, I think, exemplary.
I think when you read what the rubric is measuring,
Yeah.
I feel like
That's why, that's why I was like, yeah.
Right.
That totally makes sense. I agree.
I agree with that as well. So that brings us into data-informed decision-making. Uses multiple sources of evidence related to student learning, including state, district, and school assessment results and growth data to inform school and district goals and improve organizational performance, educator effectiveness, and student learning. That was a really very clear exemplary to me.
Exemplary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't think there's
no.
even an argument.
Might I add that in some of the non-academic assessment type things, I really like too that you reach out for student voice in things
Yes.
like the calendar or,
Yeah.
We heard so much from our student council rep or student school committee rep or whatever Jesse's title was. And you and your team, where appropriate, are very open and interested in hearing from students, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
I agree. So we can move down to rate it for the superintendent's performance rating for standard 2, management and operations. In the first indicator chosen, and just for people sitting at home, the way the evaluation works is there are actually quite a few different standards that could have been chosen. We chose some at the beginning of all this back last summer, which indicators were going to be used for the evaluation. So the first one was 2A, which is environment, develops and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, emotional, and social needs.
I said proficient. Why did I say that? Hold on. Let me just read why I said that.
So, once again, I think I'm looking at the wrong thing because I see 2A3 is a specific one, but I may be wrong.
So 2A is,
We don't do the 3 anymore.
Oh,
Yes. So there used to be, there was
Okay.
another rubric before this one, right? That had the sub-level of the sub-level. And they simplified it a couple years ago.
Okay.
And so we collapsed into the Roman numeral and the capital letter.
Okay.
and they changed the
Okay.
wording of the criteria as well, I think.
Yeah, they did. So unfortunately, I don't have a rating for that right now because
Okay.
I was looking at
So
the copy I have of that.
2A exemplary is empowers all administrators to develop and execute effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, emotional, and social needs of all students throughout the district as evidenced by orderly and efficient student entry, dismissal, meals, class transitions, assemblies, and recess, school and district buildings that are clean, attractive, welcoming, and safe and supportive learning environments for all students, assesses efficacy using feedback from students, staff, and families and other data sources and makes adjustments as necessary, models this practice for others. That's exemplary.
Okay.
Proficient is develops and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, and emotional and social needs of students throughout the district, as evidenced by orderly and efficient student entry, dismissal, meals, class transitions, assemblies, and recess, school and district buildings that are clean, attractive, welcoming, and safe and supportive learning environments for all students. So the difference in the two is what?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
It's the empowering of the administrators to do the same, I think. It's going from doing to mobilizing others to do. So reading this, I think maybe I would move it to exemplary. I don't know.
I had exemplary.
Yeah, in reading this, I think,
I think it sounds like exemplary, just based on how much the principals do
Yeah.
and how much they are empowered to do.
Well, and I was thinking about our SEL director too,
Yeah.
and all that she has been doing, just on a director level, kind of in the people on the admin team. They from where we sit at our level, feels like they are empowered to do a lot of different things, and that while you provide the oversight and the leadership, they are able to take things in the direction to make things right in their own buildings and their own areas.
and in this particular year, I don't really know what I was thinking. Because in this particular year, we also had two schools that the principals made adjustments to the
Right.
to the calendar, the schedule, and obviously you've empowered them to do that. So I think
They
proficient.
create their own DEI groups. They have their own student advisories. They have their every principal.
Sold.
Okay. So 2B is human resources management and development. Implements a cohesive approach to recruiting, hiring, induction, development, and career growth that promotes high quality and effective practice. I straddled the line on this. I cheated a little bit again. And now I got to go back to look why. The things that I thought were exemplary were looking at where the job postings are going, and looking at how we have improved in that area significantly over the past couple of years. I thought the affinity groups for educators of color, of those who identify as LGBTQ, I thought that was really phenomenal. Why did I straddle the line on that? Because that feels exemplary when I say it out loud.
I know, right? I think I was trying to balance. This one I had exemplary, but
I'm good with exemplary, unless you have. Okay.
the interesting thing about something like HR is that it takes time. It's like looking at a glacier, because we have to have openings and then we have to fill them. And then when you actually, now that it's several years along, and we actually look at the kinds of hiring we've been able to do, even with the small number, we're a very desirable district and people don't really leave often, so which is great. But when they do, we've been able to bring in some diverse staff that more resembles our whole community. And so I think the commitment is there. It just takes so much time. So
But it seems like we're making good progress.
I know.
The rate that it is.
Yeah, it's a wind erosion thing. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is 2C, scheduling and management information systems. Uses systems to ensure optimal use of data and time for teaching, learning, and collaboration, minimizing disruptions and distractions for school level staff. Okay. Thoughts on that? Did you have thoughts?
I had exemplary thoughts,
I did too. but-
which I hate to say because it's too exemplary, but one of the lenses through which I looked at this was through the lengthy and frequent this year contract negotiation discussions that we had to come to the agreement with the union. And, while that was, a closed negotiation, I was impressed with the commitment to really defend and preserve and carve out time on learning and time for students and ensure that we can meet the needs of our staff and teachers, but always with the students in the center. So this comes out in a lot of other ways as well, but I think the extra sort of icing that I witnessed this year being part of negotiating was that conversation, just looking at student learning, looking at the student schedules and how we need to support maximum time in front of our great teachers. So that's kind of where that came in.
I agree entirely. And in so many times when we've been talking about almost anything, Dr. Kavanaugh brings it back, but that's not good for students, or that is good for students, and really bringing the focus of that's where we're looking. And organizational and approach to everything is probably something that you could teach us all a little bit more on. I don't know if you.
I think one of the things that I admire, because I'm probably the least time on learning person in the group, but I like the fact that even within once again, the rigor of Hopkinton, there are other types of times that are made for the students, right? Like the new flex blocks in the high school. I think, it's very hard for some students to stay after school. It's very hard for some students, with two working parents to find times outside of school to get some of the help that they need. And the fact that help is being brought into the school day, I think is phenomenal. So, I once again, it's this great balance in Hopkinton of the rigor of, time on learning, making sure we have kids doing the best they can achievement-wise within the classrooms, but then the support. And that's also taken into account and part of the schedule.
And that's an equity issue too, that, the kids that don't have a ride home aren't able to get the extra help in the same way, and bringing that into the schools is a great opportunity to increase equity.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
No.
You already said your stuff. Okay. So the next one is 2E. Fiscal Systems develops a budget that supports the district's vision, mission, and goals, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district and school level goals and available resources. I wanted to put Exemplary Plus. That didn't seem to be an option on there.
Yeah.
But, and I hear this every year after we do our budget, what a great job you and Susan have done at showing the vision and showing how the money that we're looking to get from town and even the grant money and stuff that you're able to work with, it supports our vision. It supports what we're trying to do with kids. It really, I can't.
There is no wasted dollar in that budget.
No.
I am always shocked by how much you're able to do with the money that comes in.
And when we were tasked with having to cut $500,000 out of a very tightly crafted budget that did not have really any extra stuff in it beyond what we were absolutely needing, you and Susan were able to do it without impacting any of the things that we needed to support the district's vision. And that really was a credit to creative, out-of-the-box thinking, able to hold our part with the town and with the residents and the fiduciary responsibility we have, while still holding on to what's important for our students and our staff. So that.
And even more the communication, the constant, clear communication about where we're going with the budget, I, I'm fairly good with numbers, but I'm not necessarily really good with finance, like numbers. And I always find it really informative and easy to understand when you and Susan present the way you're moving through the budget, how you're thinking about it. Everything's very chunked up, easy to understand. And I think that takes as much work sometimes as doing the numbers. Like creating presentations of data that a person who isn't immersed in the data can understand. It's a lot of work.
The slide decks that are up on our website for all of the budget stuff that we did are easily accessible and easy to understand in a way that sometimes when you look at the little tiny details, you get lost in the forest. But the presentations that you have done are clear. They help people get on board. I think the budget was unanimous. Is that?
I think it was.
And
that
people
was nice.
understood it. You know, really, that's a huge credit.
Yep.
And such a big piece of what takes up our fall, and to get to that point.
Yep.
We're almost
Yes.
there. We're almost ready to start it again.
Oh my gosh.
It is what we said on town meeting floor. We begin in September and it culminates in May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You
a
get a
huge
couple
project.
months.
I echo everything you said. I do actually want to thank you too for putting in your, for those watching, we get justification of, what you've accomplished against all these things. And so reading through, I appreciated your highlighting the fact that while we've been able to achieve the budget numbers that we've been able to achieve, you flashed a warning light that we're in a difficult place going forward. And I appreciate that you say that. I watch our per pupil expenditure continue to drop as our numbers rise and we squeeze more efficiency out of the system. And I'm looking ahead to next year, and we're just going to have to make sure that we ask for what we need. And you do that.
Yes.
I'm not saying you don't do that, but I appreciate that you called out that we're getting to the point where there just is nothing else to cut.
Yeah.
And as the numbers grow and the needs diversify, we are going to have to continue to be be but we may also have to ask for more money. We're very, very
FY24 could
lean.
be very tricky.
Yeah.
I will also say that your clear communication with the town and our partners on the town side in knowing that we had such a significant increase in the out-of-district special education costs enabled us to move forward with the special education revolving fund, or the reserve fund, and that allowed us to move our budget forward without having it be the 4 point whatever it would have been. It then comes in with the advocacy you had around that really helped us get to the bottom line.
Yeah. And really thank you to sort of Karen and Susan for being so proactive. When they start to see that bubbling up, immediately it's out there.
And it's because we started right from our very first budget advisory group talking about that. It felt like we were able to have a shared understanding with the town. They were supportive of understanding that these are needs that we need to make sure are met, but we also want to make sure that we're able to meet the other needs that we had in the district. So that.
And just one more thing, the capital projection, the 10-year capital projections that we do that are, it's hard to know in 2022 what we're going to need in 2032. And yet you and Ms. Rothermere get together with your staff and with us and put together something based in our understanding today that at least the town can use to plan. So we have put placeholder numbers. Some of them are very scary, and it's difficult to say to the town, this could be coming up in a couple of years, a big investment, but you're not afraid to do that because knowing how big the beast is the first problem, and then you can figure out how figure out how to go about it. So I think that kind of again, it's sort of that fearless willingness to be transparent that has helped the town in general and the taxpayers anticipate and prepare.
That brings us to, as an overall rating for standard 2, I believe that would be exemplary overall.
That's what I had.
The superintendent's performance rating for standard 3, which is family and community engagement, the indicator that we chose was 3A, engagement. actively ensures that all families are welcome members of the classroom and school community and can contribute to the effectiveness of the classroom, school, district, and community.
I'm gonna pull up the rubric because I rated it, but I want to make sure I did it right. 3A, right?
Yes.
Do you want me to read exemplary and
Yeah,
proficient?
sure.
Do you want to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Proficient is promotes, monitors, and supports comprehensive, culturally responsive, and collaborative engagement practices that welcome and encourage every family to actively participate in the classroom and school community, and engages community stakeholders to contribute to the classroom, school, and community's effectiveness. That's proficient. Exemplary ensures that all personnel, this is good English, ensures that all personnel to use culturally responsive, I'm just reading as it's written, ensures that all personnel to use culturally responsive and collaborative practices that engage all families to contribute to district, classroom, school, community effectiveness, including but not limited to families with limited access to technology and families whose home language is not English. Actively engages stakeholders from all segments of the community, including residents, municipal officials, and business leaders, in furthering the mission of the school and the district. Models this practice for others.
I think it falls under exemplary. I think one of the things that has happened is we've had these hiccups in communication that occur, like some of the English learner frustrations that we heard about, but the moment that happens, the administrative team, Dr. Kavanaugh, starts getting engaged in how do we fix this, and turns the communications around. So I think that in and of itself is exemplary, right? Like very kind of tuned in to the pulse of what people are feeling about their communications with the school, and then ensuring that it moves in a positive direction. And then, of course, the town leader stuff. I mean, like we were saying with the budget, right? Like the 10-year plan, the constant discussions with our town manager, with our
Chamber of Commerce.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
But Jen Suka, really, to her credit, has done an incredible job of ensuring that if you have a primary, a home language other than English, those parents get communications in that home language, which is like almost too flawlessly, I would say. Yeah.
And I know she has been working closely with the LPAC families
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's done
exactly.
a brilliant job with that.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
You know, 19.1% of our people.
I mean, to me, exemplary is we get to the town meeting and it's unanimous because you have communicated for so many months, right? Or we talked to our town manager, financial director for the town, and they, even if they feel the tightness of their budget, they have reasonable discussions, right?
Yes.
So those are the sorts of things that I think are truly exemplary.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I think your continued, and I mean this, I can't imagine if you quantified how much time this takes out of your life, but your continued communication to families who reach out to you, you're very timely and thorough in answering questions. You make yourself available, in terms of just engagement in general. You put yourself into a variety of like media forms, whether you're at HCAM doing a show or you're always accessible.
Yep.
So I think all that goes for the exemplary as well, for engagement.
Totally agree. And that gives us an overall rating for standard 3 as exemplary. That brings us down into the superintendent's performance rating for standard number 4, which is professional culture. And the indicator chosen was 4D, which is continuous learning. develops and nurtures a culture in which staff members are reflective about their practice and use student data, current research, best practices, and theory to continuously adapt practice and achieve improved results, models these behaviors in his or her own practice. That felt exemplary to me. I did not feel like,
Yeah.
in looking at all that,
I agree.
okay, so that gives us exemplary there. And then for all of these, as I'm going back up to 2, that gives an exemplary rating in all 4 of the standards overall. Is that where you're understanding the conversation is?
I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable.
I am
And
as
very
well.
grateful as well.
Yeah.
Both.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming, so thank you.
It really, it's been a tremendously difficult year, and yet you have managed to do all of this in a way that I sometimes worry that you're not actually sleeping ever, because you're just
Wow.
constantly.
Really, a, like, sort of 24-person administrative team, you know, all of the CTLs, the SMLs, the teachers, you know, all of the custodial staff, maintenance staff, cafeteria workers. It really takes everybody to make this happen. It doesn't, you know, like when we look at some of the HR things in there, you know, I think for past 5 or 6 years, Kim's really been thinking kind of outside the box. And then one day you wake up and you say, look how the numbers have changed, you know, so it really, it's been everyone.
I agree.
It's everyone except not except it is everyone, and we have an amazing team. So
We sure do.
full stop there.
Yes.
Not taking away from the
Yes.
creativity and the professionalism, commitment, and the depth of knowledge of our principals, our
Yes.
everybody. I mean, I'm not taking away from that at all, but a different person at the helm might not tap that strength to the greater good of the district. And I think because of the way you point the district in the right direction through all of your goals, through your commitments to delivering on your indicators, and your professional demeanor, your commitment, and your focus on kids, I think that leadership enables everyone else to succeed and shine. And so that while it is a team and we are hugely grateful to everybody, you are the critical piece at the top.
Well, thank you.
It is really, really hard. It is really hard to have a big organization with so many moving parts and to say, you know what, you take that, I'm going to step back. Give me the status. Let me know how it goes. Let me know how I can help you. But you take that on. That's yours, right? And to trust your people to be able to take those pieces and run with them and empower them to do the great work they're doing. That's a very hard quality in leadership, and you're doing it so well. Like, I look across the board and I see all these people who feel like they have the ability to make decisions about the things that they have under them, like the pieces of the puzzle that are theirs, right? And you can see it. You can see it when Jen Suker walks in the door, right? You can see it when we're talking about the high school and we bring in, Mr. Bishop and he's talking about all the cool things he's doing. And they're so very different than what's happening at Hopkins and the thought processes that are going on there. And yes, the kids are different ages, but it's also, they're different leaders, right? And they're being allowed to kind of take that and run and use their strengths for the benefits of the schools, right? And you don't feel the need to be in all the nitpicky little things. And that it's amazing because that's how we keep employees, that's how they stay happy. That's how they feel respected. So, yeah, you're doing a fantastic job.
I would piggyback onto what you're saying in terms of one leadership quality that you consistently, when we talk about things that have gone so well, you always bring it back to your team. And you always give credit to the people that work with you that make it possible. But it is, it is the leadership at the top that has really enables your team to.
Well, thank you. I mean, they're amazing. So,
They are,
yeah.
they are. We have, across the district from everybody, we were talking about the cafeteria workers earlier. We, all the way, we have phenomenal teachers. We are very, very fortunate with the staff, the educators, and the
are.
administrators we have.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tomorrow's Nurses Day too. So.
Yes,
Celebrating our nurses tomorrow.
phenomenal.
Thank you. Truly, thank you.
So we will have the comprehensive document for you with the comments next week. And if people just could get those to me by Tuesday, I will try to weave them into get everybody's comments into a single.
Do you want me to forward you the new revised rubric?
Yeah, that would be awesome. And then I'll look at it over the weekend.
Okay, so then that brings us back to our agenda. Before we exit into executive session, I just want to clarify that our next meeting is May 12th, which is next Thursday. We are not meeting on May 19th. We're instead going to meet on May 26th, at which point the school committee will be a full committee with the 3 seats will have been elected, and the school committee will reorganize at that time. So with that, I would seek a motion to enter into executive session. Yep.
Point of clarification.
Yes, absolutely.
When I was in the Board of Assessors, we would have to say adjourn to, or go into this executive session not to return.
Yes, we are going to
So
adjourn.
is that the motion we need to
We're going to
make?
adjourn it is actually, I think, written in here that we're going to adjourn in executive session. We are not returning.
Yeah, okay. So I motion that we move into executive session, not to return to regular session afterwards.
Okay,
I second.
okay, and we'll do a roll call, starting with Leah.
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye, and we are exiting into executive session at 8:46. We will adjourn from there. Thank you very much to everybody who has tuned in, and have a good night.
Yes.
Okay.